We are back with another UFC main event prediction show, and in this week's main event we have Alexandre Pantoja versus Steve Erceg. So, notably, Steve Erceg only has 3 fights in the UFC and he is challenging for the title already, and we're going to go over his record and see if his skills actually meet the expectations of a title challenger or if he is in way over his head. So we'll go over Alexandre Pantoja's record. He is 34 years old, 5'5", 68-inch reach, compared to Steve Erceg, who is 28 years old, 5'8", and 68.5-inch reach. So 174 centimeters compared to 173 centimeters. So even though he is 3 inches taller, he only has 1 centimeter longer in reach. And he notably is 6 years younger than Pantoja. So Pantoja has been in the spotlight lately. He beat Manel Kape, then he beat Brandon Royval, then he choked out Alex Perez, fought for the belt against Brandon Moreno, beat Brandon Moreno by split decision. I thought that definitely should have been a unanimous decision. Pretty clear 3-2 or 4-1 for Pantoja. I thought there was only one round where Moreno clearly won it. And then he beat Brandon Royval in a unanimous decision. So now he's fighting Steve Erceg. So let's go over Steve Erceg's career in the UFC. So he comes in off of Eternal MMA. He beat Shannon Ross, who was a UFC fighter. I believe he is kicked out of the UFC now. And then was on a win streak, fought David Dvorak, won a unanimous decision. What happened in that fight? Well, David Dvorak was looking pretty good in round 1. He was looking pretty good in round 2. And then Erceg landed a pretty clean right hand on David Dvorak's chin, rocking him. Then he follows it up with a head kick, really rocking him. Basically, that was a flash knockdown. David Dvorak ends up on top. They scramble on the ground. Erceg ends the round on top, wins the round. And then the third round was really close. David Dvorak ended up gassing out, and Erceg was kind of just being on top of him for the majority of the round, winning that round, and he wins the fight 29-28. He fights Alessandro Costa. Same story. Steve Erceg is looking pretty good against Costa. Lands a very nice right hand on Costa's chin. Costa goes down. Erceg jumps on a guillotine, is in mount with the guillotine. Costa survives the round. In round 2, Costa comes out, lands some pretty big shots on Steve Erceg, hurting him, goes for cage control, ground and pound, taking him down. Costa wins round 2. In round 3, Costa starts gassing out Steve Erceg, basically controls him up against the cage for the entire 5 minutes of that round. Erceg wins 29-28. Then Erceg fights against Matt Schnell. He looks good. He hurts Matt Schnell. Matt Schnell is landing punches on him. Ultimately, in round 1, Erceg is the one that has landed the bigger shots. And then in round 2, Steve Erceg lands a very nice combination on Matt Schnell, where he lands a right straight to Matt Schnell's face, and then a left hook to Matt Schnell's chin, putting him down unconscious. So now we have the 3-0 UFC fighter versus Alexandre Pantoja, who he's trying to be on a 6-fight win streak and defend his belt for the second time. Let's dive into these fighters' games, talk about their strengths, their weaknesses, and then we'll get into how they match up against each other, and then finally go into the prediction. So Alexandre Pantoja, what is his game? Well, I would definitely say that his main game is his grappling. He comes in with a very pressure-heavy style. He pressures his opponents up to the cage with his striking, then he'll clinch with them, try to take their back, try to choke them out. That's his plan A. If that's not working, he's content to lay in his opponent's half guard, which he did against Brandon Royval. He's also content to strike with his opponents. He knocked down Brandon Moreno, who is one of the better strikers at the flyweight division. He knocked him down multiple times. Pantoja, while not having the cleanest of striking, has a really good chin. He hits really hard. He has brutal leg kicks. And because he brings so much pressure with his game, he sometimes has the ability to melt his opponents and use his striking to bridge that gap to get him back into his grappling game plan. So we see Pantoja win rounds through grappling and also finish fights through grappling. He rear naked choked Alex Perez, and he won multiple rounds against Moreno and Royval in his title fights. What is Steve Erceg's game? Well, Steve Erceg loves to play striking on the outside and then try to hurt his opponents there and grapple them once he has his opponents hurt. He will also grapple when he gets tired and he feels like his opponents are tired enough where he can get that advantage. In an interview, he said that his grappling is his main strength in a fight and his striking is secondary to that. So I think we are going to get really fun scrambles between Erceg and Pantoja. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just keep focusing on Erceg purely right now. He has good striking. He landed that left hook on Matt Schnell. He has a very good right straight. He hurt Matt Schnell with the right straight. He hurt Alessandro Costa with his right straight in round 1. And he hurt David Dvorak with that right straight. So that is a weapon that he knows that he can land, and he is good at landing that weapon. Once he has his opponents hurt, he will grapple with them. And as I previously said, he will also grapple with his opponents when he is not feeling confident in the striking. In my estimation, Steve Erceg views his grappling as a card that he can pull out to change the course of the fight, but he would prefer to have it in that A range where he just has his opponents backed up against the cage and he's able to play that distance striking game where he's landing jabs, he's landing leg kicks, he's landing that straight right, he's feinting to make his opponents react to the feints, opening up opportunities for him to land that straight right hand, and he just has these long straight punches that he's landing on his opponents. He will, however, get into brawls with his opponents, standing close to his opponents. Both of them are throwing combinations. He is good at that. He cracked Matt Schnell while doing that phone booth boxing type of brawl. However, he also is vulnerable when he does that because Matt Schnell landed on him. Alessandro Costa landed on him. He does have weaknesses in his defense, and he has been punished for those weaknesses in the past. So that brings us back to Pantoja. Pantoja is nothing if not a brawler. He is a hard-nosed fighter. He will keep coming forward. He will never quit on himself, and he eats shots. The biggest shots that Steve Erceg has is that right straight that he wobbled his previous 2 UFC opponents with, and he has that left hook which he lands consistently, and also that is the strike that he knocked Matt Schnell out with. All of those punches are going to be there to land on Pantoja. Pantoja gets hit. He is specifically vulnerable to the left hook. If you go back and watch the Brandon Royval fight, Pantoja consistently walked into left hooks that Royval was throwing. However, Royval was throwing all of his punches at like 20% power, so nothing really hurt him. Erceg is going to be throwing a bit harder than that in my opinion, and I think that his left hook does have a real potential of landing clean on Pantoja, kind of catching him when Pantoja is bull rushing forward with both of his hands outstretched trying to land his own punches, or Pantoja also has a bad habit of leaving his hands just completely down at his sides when he is striking with his opponents. So that left hook is going to be there. Pantoja is going to be getting hit with that left hook throughout the fight. He is also going to be getting hit by Erceg's jabs and probably Erceg's straight right hand. Will those strikes be enough to put Pantoja down and hand Erceg the win? I don't think they're going to be enough, and I will give my reasoning why. First of all, Pantoja has a really good chin. He rolls with a lot of the punches. And when Erceg is throwing his strikes, Erceg himself is leaving himself vulnerable to being hit back. That is exactly what Pantoja wants to see from his opponents. He would gladly eat a punch to land a punch. And most of the time, 99% of the time, that exchange is going to be in Pantoja's favor because Pantoja has a better chin than all of his opponents and he hits harder than all of his opponents. The other major factor that is making me think that Erceg is not going to be actually able to knock out Pantoja with the strikes that he's going to be landing on him is Pantoja's grappling. Even though Erceg stated that his grappling is his preferred technique and where he feels strongest in the fight. His grappling pales in comparison to Pantoja's purely in the effectiveness of it. Erceg's grappling can amount to good scrambles with ranked opponents in the flyweight division. Pantoja's grappling amounts to dominance over the top contenders in the lightweight division. Once he takes you down, he's holding you there. He's using that position to ride out the round and winning it and landing punches and going for choking attacks on his opponents. Steve Erceg simply doesn't have that caliber of grappling to the point where it is as effective as Pantoja's is. Steve Erceg will hold his opponents up against the cage, try to land some knees, take his opponents down when he has them hurt, and try to go for submissions. Those submissions have largely failed against people that he has hurt. He doesn't have the greatest of finishing capabilities in both his hands and his grappling. As I've said before, even though he knocked out Matt Schnell, he did land multiple good hard punches that had rocked him in the first round of their fight, and it took him until the second round to land a clean enough punch to actually put him out cold. He doesn't have the greatest of finishing capabilities. And you might be saying, well, Pantoja doesn't have the greatest of finishing capabilities either. He choked out Alex Perez, but when has he knocked someone out cold? But the point is, Pantoja doesn't need those finishing capabilities when he's clearly going to be landing the harder shots on Erceg, and he has that dominant grappling, which is a very clear path to victory for Pantoja. Erceg is going to need to survive that grappling that Pantoja is bringing to the table and probably have to try to finish Pantoja with his strikes. He could win rounds by hurting Pantoja on the feet and surviving Pantoja's grappling by defending all of the takedowns, but Erceg leaves himself vulnerable to being taken down, and I think that those takedowns that Pantoja brings is going to be enough to win rounds and ultimately the fight. So my prediction for this fight is going to be Pantoja, and I think we might get a TKO from Pantoja late in the fight. Maybe round 4, maybe round 5, maybe even round 3. And the reason I say that is because if you go back and you watch the Alessandro Costa fight, Steve Erceg had a good round in round 1. He did his plan A, where he was standing on the outside of Alessandro Costa. He landed that right hand on Costa, dropping him. He jumped on the guillotine, was attacking the guillotine. Great round 1. Round 2, Costa landed a few big punches. Costa went for takedowns. Costa was kind of throwing Erceg around, hurting him. Costa had a good round 2. Round 3, Erceg gutted it out, and he was really putting all of his energy and power into controlling Costa up against the cage. Costa was also exhausted by this point, and Erceg ends up winning the decision because he won round 3 by holding Costa up against the cage. Erceg was exhausted. He wasn't able to do anything after those first. He really only had one grueling round. Round 1 was not a grueling round. That was exactly his perfect pace. Round 2 was extremely grueling. That's the kind of pace that Pantoja fights at in all of his fights. All 5 rounds are a grueling pace. The only respite that you're going to get when you're fighting Pantoja is when he's on your back and not trying to choke you out that very second. All that being said, I think that Pantoja is going to tire out Erceg and finish him in the 4th round via a choke or a TKO. And I'm going to say TKO. I think Erceg's not going to be really unconscious, but he might be hurt. He might be flattened out with Pantoja on his back, landing punches on him. And the referee steps in, calls the fight off. And last week, I picked Mateus Nicolau to beat Alex Perez, and I was dead wrong in that one. I got punished for picking the prettier, more technical striker versus the grindier wrestler. So let's see if I can redeem myself by correctly picking a flyweight fight. And again, let's just recap this. Pantoja has leg kicks. He has hard punches that Erceg is vulnerable to. He has grappling. All 3 of those are weaknesses of Erceg. Erceg has been taken down before, he's been countered before, and he has shown a vulnerability to leg kicks. Erceg while he has good grappling, I think it is going to be ineffective against Pantoja. And while he has good striking, I don't think his striking is going to be good enough to finish Pantoja on the feet and win enough portions of the fight to win a decision. So ultimately, I'm going to go with Pantoja by a round 4 TKO. And I haven't looked at the odds yet, so let's take a look. Alejandro Pantoja is a minus 197 favorite with Steve Erceg at plus 158. So pretty much 2-1 odds for Pantoja. That seems about right. I do think that he has a much clearer path to victory than Steve Erceg does. However, he is vulnerable to being hit, and you never know when that one shot that's going to put him down is going to land. Anyway, thanks for taking a look at my prediction. Drop your predictions in the comment section down below. Really appreciate everyone for watching my videos. Love all of the new people that have stopped in, and enjoy the fights, everyone.